My culture that I chose to talk about is African. So, just some geographic and demographics. Why Africa? Africa is the world's second largest and the second most populous continent with approximately 58 countries. The continent is bounded on the west by the Atlantic Ocean, on the north by the Mediterranean Sea, east with the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, and the south by the mingling waters of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. So Africa's total land is approximately 11,700 square miles. The continent measures about 5,000 miles from north to south, as well as 4,600 miles from the east to west. Africa is a gigantic continent with deserts, rivers, and mountains, grasslands, jungles separate the people as well as their ideas and the culture. So Africa has about 8 major physical regions. They have the Sahara, the Sahel, the Ethiopian islands, the Savannah, the Swahili coast, the rainforest, and the African Great Lakes, as well as Southern Africa. So just some culture and values. So of course for greetings, saying hello and a handshake. So greeting people in Africa is one of the most important things you can do. Like a quick hello paired with a quick handshake is a significant way to make a positive first impression with anyone. And of course, we're showing your respect to elders. So in the African culture values, they're based on the foundation of the past as well as present, which is one of the leading reasons why elders are so well respected. So always acknowledge the elders, ask them questions, let them ask you questions, and during meal times, the elders should be the ones who are served first. So the status of their arrivals in colonies. So the very first African people were about 20 people. They were debarked in Jamestown, Virginia. So the Spanish had baptized them before they left their African lands. And during the time, the British law would not allow the fact that a baptized person could be enslaved. So these people would thus become workers with a contract, and some of them were even able to get their freedom back, as well as owning some lands. But settlers soon saw the justice gap behind the British law, also known as the common law. So that has specified that African deportees were not considered as British citizens since they were born in Africa. So as more and more Africans were brought to the colonies, slavery was an act in Maryland as well as the Carolina Constitution in 1640. So by 1700, slavery was reality of the whole South and as well as the black codes. So the African religion. So religion is an important part of millions of people's lives across the world, as well as thousands of African people are converted to Christianity every day, and also in Nigeria, and about 20 new religion sects or group come to every month. So more than 10 million Jews from all over the world observe the Sabbath every week, and millions of Muslim pilgrims travel to Mecca in the Middle East every year. Fun fact, South Africa is also called the Rainbow Nation because of its variety of people, culture, and of course the diversity there. So the people follow many spiritual traditions as well as religion faiths. But in South Africa, the constitution protects freedom of religion, meaning that everyone is allowed to have and follow whatever faith they want to, or if they decide not to follow at all. So the gender roles in women. So in common with most underdeveloped areas of the world, women in African societies are to varying degrees limited by the gender. So women are expected to raise children, cook, clean the house, fetch woods, produce, serve others, and as well as produce many offsprings for their husbands. So the gender roles for male. So the men are most likely skilled workers. They do get paid the most. So even if a woman and a man have the same position, the men will be paid a lot more. There are also the head of household as well as provider in the financial support of the family. So in Africa, the language, there's so many languages out there. The continent is one of the world's most diverse due to the large population. So linguistics estimate that nearly about 2,000 native languages are spoken in Africa. African food. So foods to enjoy every day are colorful fruits, vegetables, especially leafy greens, tubers like yams and sweet potatoes and beans of all kinds. So foods to eat a few times each week or in moderation are healthy oils, homemade sauces, spices, fish, eggs, poultry, and yogurts. And foods to save for special occasions include meats as well as sweets. So birth practices. So pregnancy is acknowledged but not celebrated. It's also believed that witches and evil spirits are capable of stealing the pregnancy or interfering with it. So with the pregnancy in women, they're not permitted to associate with the known witches in the neighborhood or allow strangers to rub their belly. So the pregnant woman is forbidden to accept any gifts or as well as celebrate the pregnancy until the birth of infant. And as I stated earlier, it's believed that accepting gifts and celebrating the baby before the birth will invite anger to the gods as well as the ancestors. So for the unmarried woman, unfortunately, pregnancy will be really dreadful and unbearable. In Africa, pregnancy before marriage is considered forbidden. Strangers as well as family members will ridicule as well as even subject the unmarried woman to violence. So these pregnancies and births are not celebrated. Sometimes to avoid the stigma, the family may disown the pregnant woman. And once the baby do come, the children will be considered as bastards in the family. So death practices in Africa. So death rituals in Africa are to ensure that the deceased is properly put to rest, so his spirit is at peace, and that he can take his peace among the protected ancestors. So there's a right burial as well as a wrong burial. So the right burial ensures that the ancestor doesn't remain to haunt as well as exert power over the living, but instead rests in peace and protects the family. Some common health problems in Africa. So the top 5 according to the World Health Organization, the top 5 killers in Africa in 2012 were HIV and AIDS, lower respiratory tract infections, diarrheal diseases, malaria, and as well as strokes.